Hey everyone, welcome to week 2. Hey, I had a chance to look over all the discussion board questions. I love the discussion on rhetoric and arguments. Most likely I'll have your papers graded. I may take the weekend to grade them, but I should have them all graded by Monday. But what I wanted to do in week 2 is now add to our understanding of rhetoric. And you'll notice that when you're over the discussion board questions, a lot of students, great definitions, but the one way that students want to define rhetoric is they want to use the word persuade. And I am still going to maintain my definition of rhetoric. So as of week 2, I'm still going to maintain my definition of rhetoric as words used to manipulate, to deceive, and to con people. And I guess we could suggest that your goal, if you think rhetoric is to persuade me why my definition is incorrect. But given that, I want to add to our understanding of rhetoric and argument. So there are 3 things that rhetoric and argument always use that I want to talk about. And these 3 terms are called logos, pathos, and ethos. Now, some students may be familiar with these terms, and if you are, that's fine. And some students, it's maybe the first time that you've heard these terms, so I'm going to help you define them in this kind of short little lecture. So the first thing that rhetoric and argument always use is logos. And if I was in a ground class, I would write the term on the board and I would say, okay, look, based on how the word looks, here in case how the word sounds, how might you define rhetoric or logos? What do you think the word means? And most students can look at the word or hear the word logos and they immediately think logic. And I like sometimes when students write down things because some students will write things like facts or statistics. But logos is defined as logic. And if you think about it, that would make sense, right? Because if I am having an argument, I'm going to want to make logical appeals. If in fact I'm trying to persuade someone, I might want to appeal to their logos, which is logic. So logos is the one that most students can kind of get pretty quickly, right? Logos is an attempt to use logic. Now, pathos is a little bit different, right? Pathos is generally defined as emotion. And so sometimes I try to take, how do I create a mnemonic so I can remember that pathos is an emotion? So I look at the word P and I put passion. So I think of someone who's passionate, they're going to use a lot of emotion, right? So P stands for pathos, which stands for emotion. And if you wanted to accept my definition of rhetoric, which I'm still going to maintain as words used to manipulate, deceive, and con people, then that would mean, right, you'd want to use emotion, right? We might want to cater to people's emotions. We know people are emotional beings, so it can be easy to cater to their emotions to either persuade them or mislead them. Now, ethos is the one that students sometimes have the hardest time with, right? The E does not stand for emotion. So how do I remember ethos? So ethos can stand for 2 or 3 things. Ethos can be character or authority. It can be ethics or it can be morals. And in our class, I won't define ethos as morals, ethics, because there's a specific argument that deals with ethics and morals. So I'm going to define ethos as character and authority. And so that's the one that students kind of go, okay, well, I don't get that. What do you mean by character or authority? So sometimes the character or authority can give the person who's using rhetoric some credibility. So I always ask students, I said, okay, I'm going to give you a choice. You can continue to have our class with me, or you continue to have our class with a new instructor who teaches rhetoric and argument, has a PhD from Yale, and teaches at Harvard. Which instructor would you rather have? And it's always funny because I always think someone who teaches at Harvard and has published a book on rhetoric, right, they have such credibility and authority, right, that they would be the much better teacher because that's their ethos. But the flip side of that ethos is sometimes students say, I wouldn't want to take a class from a professor at Harvard because what if he's a jerk, or what if he's harder than than me, right? So that ethos, character, authority, right? Well, I think someone who teaches at Harvard has a high authority. Students are kind of scared of that ethos. The other way to think of ethos is if you think of like Nike ads. Nike will use an advertisement, and because Nike wants to sell a product, right? They want to sell shoes. They'll use the ethos of a really popular athlete, right? So generally Nike has used the ethos of Michael Jordan, or they use the ethos of LeBron James. Why are they using these people's character and authority? Well, they're considered to be the two best basketball players ever, right? So that might give you a sense of how ethos works. So we now understand that rhetoric and argument use three things. They use logos, which is logic, pathos, which is emotion, and ethos, which is character and authority. And there's a discussion board question in which I just want you to look at the three terms and which one do you think might be the best one to use if you're going to use rhetoric. And I look forward to seeing what you guys say during week 2, and I'll check in during the week.